Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Schnell Guitar Shop. What the hell's going on with my hair here? Alright, so we're back in the shop. It's been a busy week, but it's time to get going on this guitar here. This is a fully hollow body guitar that I'm working on, but it uses stop bar tailpiece. It has just a slightly thicker top on it to help support the string loading, and it's been a pretty cool design that I've come out with. I did one other that was a single cut, sounded really great. Went to a guy in Colorado. If you're watching, thank you, buddy. I got some good feedback from that guy, and really like that guitar. Really excited about this one. There's a little less work on it than some of my others because it doesn't require me to make the tailpiece and whatnot. So I was hoping to knock this one out. Where we're at on this is needs wiring for the pickups, the knobs, selectors, etc. It needs to be set up. It needs a truss rod cover. It needs a few things, right? So for today, my objective is to get the frets leveled and dressed. And if I've done a good job fretting this, which actually I just checked, and I have, this is a pretty easy job. So what I'll do is first use the dual acting truss rod so I can bend the neck from cupping or bowing backwards to forwards or forwards to backwards, and I can adjust that. And what I'll do is I use my straight edge here, and going across the top of the frets, I check that all the way from one side to the other. I get it as straight as humanly possible. And then I'll take some 600 grit sandpaper on a sanding bar. I'll sand until I've just slightly kissed the crown of each one of these frets, just the very top part, just as soon as I've just barely touched the top. And then I'll come back through with a little file, and I will put the proper profile back on each fret, because each fret gets a little different amount taken off of them. As I go, I'll show you the tools that I'm using, and I'll show you the process I use. But this is pretty simple. Should be able to knock this out pretty quick, and everybody loves a little time lapse. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the subscribe button so you know when I post new videos. And don't forget to like if you like this kind of content. Thanks. All right, so that's a little bit tedious, but the masking is done. Now this nice ebony fretboard that we have underneath isn't going to get marred up or damaged as we go along and level and polish these frets. So what I've got on there is, this is tape that I get from a company called, I think it's Luthier's Mercantile, and this is a special binding tape. And then this I get off of Amazon. This is a special like pinstripers tape. I think this is a special like tape for folks who paint cars. But both of those have a real nice heavy paper thickness, and they protect really well. Yet they have a pretty low tack, so they don't damage finishes. I really like both of these tapes. You know, as with anything, I guess, nowadays, there's really specialized ways that you do it. And I recommend if you're going to do a job like this, to look for tapes like that. You know, other people may use different things, but you want a low-tack tape, you want a pretty heavy, durable tape, and there's just special tapes made for darn near everything. So I have also gone through and used a black Sharpie marker to darken the top of each fret. What that'll do is, as I pass the sander, and this is level and accurate to, I believe, 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch, I think it's a thousandth. Maybe it's a half thousandth. It's super smooth. You can see on this side, what they do is they do a precision grind on this thing. So anyway, both sides are super straight and true. This is from StuMac, great tool. This is for fret leveling. This is called a beam, leveling beam. It's super heavy. You don't have to put much force down, and it just cruises along real nice as we go to level these frets. This is an 18-incher, works great on the 24 fretboard. I would say 24 frets is a luxury and a bonus for a guitar player. I mean, I think it's nice and super important to have, but I mean, you're talking like 8-10% more work just for those 2 frets, right? I mean, like, you got 2 more frets to do of 20, instead of 22, you get 24. You've got extra leveling to do, extra polishing to do, extra masking to do. You've got extra fretboard to deal with. So that just adds up throughout the process. Super pumped to have it, but you think about that as you go through. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see on some of these frets, on a few, just on the end, it might be hard to see, but there's just a couple little tiny nicks that my tooling that I use to clip and trim the frets made. These are stainless steel frets. They're super hard, which is great because they're going to stay and last forever and not get those little pits and notches that you see in them that end up leading to refret jobs. But they're really hard on tooling, really hard on my hands. I probably need to get like a little hydraulic cutter type deal for this. Because you can just feel the tendons in your arms just, snap when you cut this stuff. I've got these special tools for it. Here's one right here. Here's the cutter. This is made by the same company that makes the fret wire, Jescar. Great company. They also make this Evo gold colored wire. It's really distinctive. It's a little too distinctive for my tastes. I'm a little bit worried that, just building speculative guitars, whether I'd want to use that since it's so specialized. Here's also the fret tang trimmer. This is a super cool little tool. See if you can see every kind of little angle there. But you just slide the end in, and you can just trim a little bit of that tang off the bottom of the fret, which is what you have to do when you have a bound fretboard, which most of my guitars do. It's a nice touch. I don't know that it's really necessary. I don't think it improves the playing or anything like that, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is just triple, quadruple check that using the dual acting truss rod, I've bent this neck exactly as perfectly level and plumb as I can. Now, some people, rather than using a straight edge, we use a straight edge with little cutouts for each fret. And I'm really fine with people doing that. I think it's a valid way to do it. But what they're doing is when they're adjusting this truss rod, getting the fretboard itself in perfectly straight alignment. I think we're really mincing hairs here because I'm probably talking about taking off in the range of like 5/1000ths of an inch off of one of these frets, more off of one of these frets than off of the others at the max. So I think we're talking about such a minimal amount that what I would prefer to do is get it as straight and true as I can using the straight edge, which means I'm going by the top of each fret as the straight line so that I'm removing as little material off each fret. Number one, for longevity of those frets, and number two, because afterwards we're gonna have to come back through and reprofile that fret so that it's a nice, arc to it. It can't come up and then be flat at the top and then jut down. And it can't get all school bussy. That's another, thing where you just barely round off the edges where you sanded it, but you don't get a nice smooth profile. Nobody wants any of those results. And so what I do to prevent any of those problems is I come back through with this triangle style file. This is a medium one. I've got a little tape on here because I really only am using the kind of outer portion here. I suppose if it ever gets dull enough from that stainless, I'll trim it off and then use this part here. But this is again from Stu Mac, and I'll show you how I use this, but this is to kind of reprofile that deal. So let me take a couple strokes off of here, get this close, and then let's check back in. Whew, all right, pound some hydration. Oh, yeah. I don't mind if any of you guys notice this. It's pitch black outside. It's very late at night. This is the only time I get time to do this stuff. And I love it, and I love bringing you guys along for the ride. So I'm going to remind you again, if you didn't subscribe, if you didn't hit like, please do it. It helps me out. Helps me know if you like what I'm doing. And makes it worthwhile to do this kind of stuff. So, where are we at here? Well, I've done I just count as I go. I did about, what I count as about 13 passes with this sanding beam. I make a little check mark anywhere the fret has been touched. Here's one of 3 right here. Right here, you can kind of see. It's difficult to see, I understand. I need a lot of light on this so I can see what I'm doing. But if I look at each fret on the side, on the bass, center, and treble, I've got 3 marks per string. I'm about 80% level on all this stuff after just 13 quick passes with that leveling beam. I will go back over this a few more times until it's perfect everywhere and just barely sanding the top. I'll come back through, like I mentioned, with this triangular file, round these back out, and then it'll be time to polish this up. Rock and roll. So with just a couple minutes work with this little triangular file, I've been able to finish these leveled frets into redressed frets. What does dressed mean? Well, what we're talking about is what you see here on the left is a rounded fret. Here, the fret's been flattened. This is the leveling process. What we need to come back through and do is be able to remove these portions on either side of that fret of the flat spot to get it back into the right kind of profile. And so you might say, well, why use a file like this? That seems pretty kind of sketchy. That turns this into an art, right? Because there's no radius, the exact radius is on here. Well, if we look, depending on how much material is removed from each fret, the radius on each fret is going to have to be different. What we're really looking for is a profile, which is a curvature. And so if we try to match the pointiness or something like that of each fret would end up getting very humpy. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's my marker. What I mean by that is if we had a standard arc on a file that we always shape to, right here, when we went to set that down on a fret that looked like this, the fret would get removed in such a way that it would look something, it would have this weird effect in it, and that's called school busing. This can happen if you use a tool like that. It's not the right tool. There's a lot of files sold like that. And I'm sure people are making use of them to good effect. I don't want to diss on it. I know it can be done. But this is not as much of an art as it seems because re-rounding and dressing frets is not as much of a science as you might think it is. There is an art to it. This is a very fine, sharp but very fine file. You're not removing much with each stroke. So, with repetition, you're going to get good at this, good at re-arcing and profiling those frets. And ultimately, with a tool like this, you're going to have the control you need to get the right profile. You saw me maybe ducking down a few times to check, am I sure that I'm meeting my profile arc exactly right in the center of the fret? Am I happy with the profile of the fret? And the eye picks up on that pretty easily. Every tech that I've had look at my guitars has commented on how nice the fretwork was. So I think this technique works, right? Like, I am still obviously always working to improve my technique, to improve my setups, to improve my guitars. But this technique works, and this is, I think, how you should be doing it. So let me get back to the polishing, and then this part of setting this guitar up will be done. So in preparation for polishing these frets, I've been working with this tiny little fret end dressing tool. And while I'm not going for like a half hemispherical fret end here, where it's all perfectly, round in 4 directions, 3 full axes. Anyway, it's not like super fancy. But what my philosophy is here is I'm trying to keep this fret as wide as possible because, you can't add material back on a fret. And so I like to keep it as wide as I can. I also don't like to reduce the amount of fretboard that's available here. If someone orders one of these from me rolled, quote unquote, I will kind of carve that back a little bit. But it's really not preferable. Some people have to play that way because they've gotten used to it. But that means you've also gotten used to a pretty small fret area. Again, these are all taste things. But the way I prefer to do this is to keep a nice wide fret. So the end needs to be dressed pretty significantly to give a really nice round shape to it. Because I'm not just sanding it over and rounding that fret back and losing a bunch of playable area on it. So it's a little tedious. I'm going to go ahead. It's getting pretty late, but I'm going to go ahead and finish the other side and then polish this. And then next time I see you, we'll be installing the tuners in this, and we've got the bridge. So maybe we'll string it up to hear what it sounds like. Maybe we'll get the pickups and electronics on order and get this thing finished up. That would be great. This guitar is not sold, so this guitar will be going on the website for sale. So thank you again, YouTube family. Stay safe out there, and let me know in the comments if there's other videos you'd like to see. But happy to be with you. Peace.